Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. I'm quite excited about this episode. As I always like to say, we have a great episode for you. We have Samit Patel from a company called Acresso, who makes a solution that you might be familiar with. It's been around for quite some time, called AdminStudio, which is a phenomenal solution for packaging about anything and everything. So I won't go into that. That's Samit's job to do that. So let's go ahead and start this. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Doug. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to get a chance to actually delve into some of the technology and get started here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, first of all, before we get going, I want to just ask, and let you explain, who are you and what do you do over at Acresso?
So I'm actually the product manager of AdminStudio at Acresso here. One of the big things that I've done in the past is I've worked with the desktop engineering groups across most of the Fortune 500 organizations out there in a pre-sales type of competency as a pre-sales consultant, pre-sales engineer. So I've kind of been out there for the last 5 years, just kind of gathering data and understanding a lot of the problems that people are running into. And as I stepped into my product management or program management type of role, I was able to leverage a lot of that knowledge and kind of drive the AdminStudio roadmap in a brand new direction over the last year and a half than it has been in the past. So it's really exciting to be able to get a chance to speak to people that I've actually seen the pains. So I'm excited to get started here.
Well, perfect. So with no further ado, let's dive into it. And in front of us is the AdminStudio Enterprise Edition screen. So what is this? Take us through what's up on the screen now.
Yeah, so here you're just looking at the UI or the user interface of the AdminStudio Enterprise Edition that we have here. Just to give you a little bit of background here, AdminStudio was really developed as a kind of solution set that's going to help solve the desktop engineer's main issues as it relates to, let's say, something like application deployment, right? Since the days of SMS 2.0 or since the days of the initial mainframe, one of the biggest issues that people have had is they take installers and they have to take these, and IT admins are saying, what am I going to do with this? How do I get this out the door to my end user's machine with two goals in mind, right? They want to do it as efficiently as possible, and they want minimal impact on the end user desktop. Absolutely. And that's really why AdminStudio is developed. Okay. So what we tried to do is we kind of followed in Microsoft's footsteps here, and Doug, you can attest to, when MSI first came out, what was the whole idea behind MSI?
To make it easy and simple and also configurable, right? So that we can configure the settings and everything on a application and sort of automate the installation, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly right? I mean, what we're doing is we are making it configurable, we're making it visible. And visibility is one of the hugest roadblocks that people had run into prior to MSI. So when we talk about legacy applications, the only way a desktop engineer would know the contents of this black box or this package is if they were to lay it down on a machine and capture the contents that were laid down during the course of this installation. So what MSI did was it took what was laid down during the course of that installation and made it in an industry standard type of visible and configurable format. And that's really what AdminStudio's main focus is, being able to allow you to take these legacy applications and go through a best practice, a completely repeatable practice across your entire organization, and get your applications out the door much more efficiently than you've been doing so in the past, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those of you guys out there watching this, I failed to say this when we first introed this video, but right now we're going to go through in sort of a high level through AdminStudios, and then we're going to come back and do a couple more videos for you guys, diving really deep into each of the areas, configuration points and things of that nature. So just want everyone to let everyone to know that. So as you go through this one, think about if you're interested in seeing ThinApp or Citrix applications being packaged, then we'll get to those in another video. So in really great detail. So let's continue along.
Yeah, so, and you know what, I'm glad you mentioned that, Doug, because one of the things that, we just focused on talking about MSI for the last couple of minutes, but in reality, as organizations are becoming more and more familiar with MSI and, really honing down and, sharpening up their application deployment process today, there have been game-changing, introductions into the market, if you will, as far as application virtualization technologies go, right? So, Doug, you mentioned ThinApp, for instance. Citrix has a great technology called ZenApp. I think everyone's familiar with Microsoft's acquisition of SoftGrid and now their release of AppV 4.5. So the way that we are looking at application virtualization is it's just an evolution of MSI. It's an evolution. It's a new means to an end, a sexier, newer way to actually package something up and get it out the door even more quickly than you had to do with MSI, because now you've eliminated the regression testing. So if we take a look at, where you want to get to, a lot of the organizations that we're dealing with here, what we're looking at right now within AdminStudio is our application catalog. And if people have been talking about release management best practices, ITIL compliance, federated CMDB databases, this would be a small subset of that ITIL compliance in that release management space. So what we've actually initially developed the application catalog that you're looking at here for is for housing our MSIs so that we can automate a lot of the conflict analysis that you are running into prior to deploying an application. So what you're looking at here in my app catalog is just a sample group of applications of MSI packages that I've gone ahead and imported. And what you're able to see here is we're actually using something like this as a central store, a central repository of all my application metadata. So here I can come in as any packager or as any executive, and if I want to understand what my desktop environment looks like, I have the ability to pull all my packages in the central store and say, if I need to do a search on a problemsome file such as, MSC rvt.dll, because there's some type of issue going on in terms of DLL conflicts because I have one version on the OS and I have an application using another version, I can certainly do that because here all the data around all of my applications, COM objects, DLLs, executables, files, and components, including registry entries actually, is all stored in a single spot. So now when it comes to doing true automated conflict analysis prior to deployment, I have the ability to simply take my MSI, and since it is, as Doug mentioned, open and editable, I have the ability to come in here, read those MSI tables, and run through a conflict wizard where I can actually see how it's going to impact my environment prior to doing the actual deployment. So this has kind of been our bailiwick in terms of our competency over the last 5 or 6 years, where we've focused on kind of honing a best practice in place where we take your existing MSIs or we help you repackage into the MSI format, but eventually really where you want to get to is you want to get to a place where you're able to essentially manage and automate the testing around all of your applications.
Absolutely, and you can just go ahead, and I noticed when you right-clicked on that, there was an import. So we can just point that towards a new MSI that we get, and it just imports this directly into the application manager here, correct?
That's exactly right. So one of the things that I always stress when we're talking about AdminStudio and when we're talking about release management is that I would take the time to actually set up this application catalog in a manner that's going to kind of mimic your desktop management environment as it stands today. You can create a separate group for your marketing applications, a separate group for your sales applications, some for accounting, so that when you come back in here, you're going to really understand how this application, I can run my Cognos decision stream tool, see how it's going to play with Matplotlib. I can see exactly how it's going to work with, my system test tracker. So it's really just a nifty way to eliminate a lot of the regression testing that people spend the bulk of their, SLAs or service level agreement time on when they're actually pushing an application out the door.
Very cool. Now, how does that work? Does it run it? How does that work, I guess?
So, it's a good question. I mean, what we're trying to do here is because we understand, exactly what the contents of an MSI package are, since it's all kind of laid out in a table format. What we're able to do here, if I wanted to go through and evaluate my packages against best practice rules or detect my conflicts, I can generate my reports as well. What I'm doing here is I'm simply running a SQL query that I've actually built out my rules engine around. So I have about 36, conflict analysis rules and another 10 best practice rules that we sat down with HP's global services and Microsoft's consulting services to come up with. And what we've done is we've built these rules out, and when I run this analysis here, I can pick and choose which of these best practices are applicable in my environment. So if I want to confirm the validity of components with empty key paths, that's just a best practice that you want to make sure that you're checking for. If that's important in your organization, go ahead and check it. If it's not, you certainly have the ability to write your own rules as well, or you could simply uncheck, click Next, and then once I actually click Next again here, I'm able to choose what packages I want to test against. So if I want to see how my Cognos decision stream is going to play against Matplotlib, I'll just pick that application, or I could pick an entire group. Click Next, and what you're seeing here is complete automation. We're not actually launching the application. We're not spinning up another image in the background. We're not asking you to, show us a test lab machine that we're going to run this on. What we're just doing is we're simply comparing MSI table. So we're seeing if there's, overlapping components, if there's file conflicts in terms of DLL versioning. So we're just doing a lot of the basic things here. I can just put in a test report, save it on the desktop, and you get a nice, neat executive level report letting you know that there might be 9 issues here, for instance. So if you take a look, Cognos decision stream against Matplotlib, you can figure out exactly what issues there are. And you'll see these merge module integrity conflicts. These are things that you can actually import your merge modules instead of using separate files and components, just to make your package a little cleaner. That's tied to best practices there. So you'll see it's fairly straightforward. I didn't actually have to do any heavy lifting, and now I know how this application is going to impact my end user environment.
And you can run this on my workstation. I don't need a special dedicated box for this, correct?
That's exactly right. So if you set up your application catalog on your SQL Server farm that you already have out there, you're able to go ahead and just log into that SQL Server farm, automate this testing, and you're going to be able to get these reports and store them up on some file share where every Monday, your IT director can come in and take a look at what you've done over the course of the week for deployment.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, so let's continue on. What else is there? There's so much to it. So
that's the thing. There's a lot to it, but I wanted to show really up front what the end state is. I mean, a lot of people ask me, okay, that's great. I've seen repackaging tools. I've seen editors. I just want to see where I eventually want to get to, and this is a very good semblance of where you want to get to. But getting here is the trick, right? So how do I get my MSI into a format that's right for my enterprise? How can I customize it? How can I apply all my standards? How do I even start here? So what we actually have, being Installshield and all, is we have an assistant. Everything that we do is always very wizard-driven, as you know. So I can come through, pick any type of application that I want to go through and repackage. So for the sake of this demo, I'm not actually going to spend a lot of time repackaging, but if I wanted to choose an app, you'll see that I'm able to pick a legacy application, specify all my product names, do my file versioning up front here, and then really choose. If you look on the left-hand side, we're going to kind of help you figure out exactly what you need to do as you go through our assistant here. Should I be repackaging? What's the point? Why is MSI so great? When I actually try to figure out how to repackage, should I use the install monitor or the snapshot? Either way, what you're looking at doing here is you're looking at capturing a black box and turning it into an MSI so you know exactly what the contents of that package are. And I'm assuming that everyone listening is fairly familiar with repackaging, so I'm not going to get too far into detail around that. But once you actually go through the installation monitoring process, what you're going to get is you're going to get one of these IRP files, which is our installation repackager file. So, Doug, this is actually our diff. This is what was captured while you were using the repackaging wizard here. So you'll see that as I ran through the installation, I laid down 45 files, 366 registry entries, and I can come in here and set my global exclusions list to say that, you know what, these files are good, but I know that these two are garbage. I can just right-click, exclude them, and they'll no longer be part of the build. But now, as we talk about this, evolution of application technologies, the next step after MSI, people are looking at piloting application virtualization. How do I choose which technology to use, and how do I leverage the work that I've already done? So if I've gone through this process for 5,000 MSIs, which a lot of our customers have, do I really have to go back and repackage all of them or resequence them or reprofile them or whatever technology you're looking to use? At this point, we can actually just go into our repackaged output, and you'll see that as we take a brand new package, I just have to check another box, and I can create an application side by side. I could create a XenApp profile. If I had my ThinApp builder license in here, I could create all three. So just with the click of a single button, I'm able to create an MSI and 3 different virtual formats.
And this is right here is priceless, because I think, and we hear this, I hear this every time I talk about SoftGrid/AppV, is people say, yeah, we love it, but sequencing is a pain. It's difficult. It's a science. I got to be a rocket scientist to sequence things. With AdminStudios, I don't have to be a rocket scientist. All I have to have is my MSI that's configured, right?
That's exactly it, right? I mean, a lot of people have been using AdminStudio or a similar type of product over the last couple of years, so they have they understand MSI technology. Desktop engineers understand exactly what they need to do to deploy an MSI successfully. We don't want you to learn a new tool. We don't want you to learn a new technology. And in fact, as we delve deeper into the virtualization technology, the specific virtualization technologies in our other DABCC TV sessions, we're going to talk about exactly how we're doing a lot of the processing, a lot of the algorithms around, what goes where when we're actually creating these virtual profiles or these virtual containers. And we'll talk about exactly how we're doing some of that heavy lifting or that grunt work for you.
Absolutely, because I think this right here, especially for a lot of our listeners out there, are Citrix customers. So the XenApp profiling stuff is huge for them, right? It's here. They're also AppV customers, or VMware ThinApp from the ThinStall guys. I mean, this is invaluable. This is the part that I really get excited about. So why? Because it makes my life easier. I got too much stuff going on. I don't need a difficult life. So I'm really excited. So anyway, we'll come back to this, but what else would you like to show us?
So, in terms of process that we've driven around getting to that point that we talked about where you have a fully tested MSI sitting in your application catalog, the next thing that you would do typically at this point is you would actually open up this application into our Installshield Editor. So the Installshield Editor that you're about to see is actually the same product that setup authors are using to create the installs from scratch. So you have kind of unlimited flexibility, if you will, when it comes to actually customizing your application. So once you've actually built out this MSI, you can take this MSI and tweak it in any way that you want to so that you can make sure that it's right for your organization, right? So if I wanted to open something like Firefox, and in my organization, we have, rules around the fact that you can't, it's a lockdown environment, you're not allowed to change or add or remove programs. I can certainly come into my general information here and just disable my add, remove, change, repair button, put in all my publisher and product URLs, support contacts. And the view that you're seeing here is our installation designer, which is really for our MSI savvy users, where if they wanted to go ahead and do some direct table editing and set their own launch conditions, this is something that even I don't feel comfortable enough coming in here and doing. Like if I wanted to set my launch condition and, say that I need to have version NT greater than 500, so it has to have at least XP to run. You could certainly do that and write your descriptions out here, but for the rest of us, once again, we have another nifty assistant.
Oh, I love it.
And
it's a lot easier than Orca, too, right? You don't want to have to use Orca.
Well, that's the thought, right? Orca, changing tables in Orca can be kind of daunting. So what we're doing is we're just putting a very, very nice UI on top of what you're doing, basically, in Orca. Yeah. So if you wanted to come through and change your application name, if you wanted to learn more about add and remove programs, you'll see on the left-hand side, we're kind of going to drive you through the whole thing. If you wanted to set your prerequisites, in fact, I have to put a web address in. If I wanted to come through and put in my prerequisites, I have the ability to do so. If you're savvy enough to say that only install this on a machine with this particular registry entry or this particular file set, we allow you to actually write your own custom software conditions that'll drive you through creating it by registry entry or by folder path. But for the rest of us, if we just want to go through and set Adobe Acrobat Reader 8, there you go. Just set a prerequisite by clicking a box.
Oh, that is so cool.
And, if you wanted to add additional files, do a lot of the customization that you would normally do. It's as simple as, coming in here, add new file, browse to the file, and then you're able to figure out how you want to go ahead and add it. You can extract your COM information during the process as well. So a lot of this is very technical in the sense that, you're doing your customization, but in reality what I wanted to focus on was, what we've done traditionally at a high level to make sure that people are able to deploy their applications as efficiently as possible. And that's really doing the repackaging, doing this type of editing, and then getting into the application catalog, automating a lot of that testing, doing a lot of that legwork for you, and then just handing it off to Config Manager or Citrix, or handing it off to any major desktop management type of solution. We have hooks into all of them. One of the things that you'll hear over the next couple of episodes here is that, we are very agnostic, so we don't just tie ourselves to a single technology. And as you'll see from the top there, we're looking at supporting, as we move forward, all of the leading app virtualization technologies. And we'll get into those tabs in a couple of later episodes, but you'll see that if you remember the process assistant here that we're going through around, customizing MSIs, we're going to try to keep that look and feel as simple as possible and as similar as possible when we talk to these virtualization technologies as well.
Absolutely. And it's neat to see Microsoft, VMware, and Citrix all up there, because I guess Microsoft and Citrix are friends, but VMware and Citrix and VMware and Microsoft and VMware and Microsoft and Citrix don't necessarily all like to play together well. So from a solution, you look at it, it's like, this is one solution for everything I do, because as a customer, I don't care about competition between companies. I care about getting my darn job done at the end of the day, right? So I can go home and play with my 2 little kids. And that's what this allows me to do, and that's what I love so much about it. So.
And that was the thought behind it. And you know what? In reality, that was the thought that came from the vendors as they approached us as well. It was really, it doesn't matter who else you support. We just want, app virtualization is a great technology. We want to make sure that people are able to start, realizing the cost savings immediately. And, if you're going to be the means to an end to help them get there and expedite their process in terms of this migration to our technology, by all means, go ahead.
Absolutely. And so before we go ahead and wind this up, I just want to ask you, sir, one more big question. That is, so I'm a customer. I'm sitting down with Microsoft or VMware or Citrix, or just I'm looking at my traditional, app load, and I say, gee, I have 1,000 applications. It's going to take me months to do this. With AdminStudios, that saves me a lot of time. Can you talk a bit about that just briefly?
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into probably some of our future episodes here. But in terms of, if you're looking at, you've spent the time using AdminStudio, using whatever technology to create these MSIs over the last, umpteen years, well, actually it'd probably be about 8 years, 9 years. If you've spent enough time to actually put a process in place or create a packaging center of excellence, and you have all of these applications ready and rolled out in your environment, the next thing that people are saying is, wow, exactly what Doug said. Do I really have to go back and redo all 1,000 applications? Do I have to figure out what I'm going to do, figure out which ones I should virtualize, figure out how I should be deploying them? So what we're going to do, and we'll cover this in some of our future episodes, is we're going to allow you to leverage all of the customization, all of the packaging, everything you've done with your applications to date, and help you do a direct map into these other virtualization formats and do a lot of that conversion for you without having to go back and do the recapture.
Well, perfect. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to show us before we call this one a episode and then move to future? We're going to record one after this one if you have some time, but get into some of these other tabs and get more detail.
So I think at this point, at a high level, we've covered a lot around the value proposition around AdminStudio, how we've kind of played in the past, and I think that this is a great segue, a great stopping point for us to record the next one and figure out, where we're playing in the future, so to speak.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much. This is wonderful stuff. So for those out there listening, well, one more question. Someone says, hey, this is great. I don't need to see any more. Where do they go to learn more information? Can they download an eval? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you wanted to go ahead and download an eval, you can go to Acresso.com/AdminStudio. You'll actually see it on the landing page. We have a 21-day evaluation available at no charge, so you can pull it down. It's going to be fully functional with all of the virtualization capabilities in place as well. One thing that you'll see is we also have quite a few white papers, not just around MSI packaging and best practices associated with that, but also you'll see that we have quite a few benchmarks with around virtualization technologies, some ROIs, some interesting case studies, and if you check back often, you'll see that we're going to be updating those very, very frequently as we get more and more data points around some of the cost and time savings people are gaining from virtualization and AdminStudio in general.
And that's awesome. And definitely we'll add links and everything in the show notes of this video. So if you're watching this on DABCC.com, just sort of scroll down a bit and you'll see a bunch of links over to the eval and some of those other collateral that you mentioned. So thank you so much. And let's go ahead and call this one a DABCC TV episode, I guess, and let's move forward. Sound good?
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, Doug, and I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone out there for listening to this episode of DABCC TV. And as always, don't forget to visit www.dabcc.com for all the latest virtualization news and support resources. And definitely check out DABCC Radio, which is our audio podcast, so you can listen to those things as you're driving